this environment and come out hitting like you did and kill penalties and that kind of thing?
How do I describe it? I thought we were good tonight. I didn't think we were great. I thought we went from such an extreme series in terms of physicality. I would say it was under physical from what we were used to. And then they had a good pushback halfway through the game. We kind of got a little bit away from what we're good at, and they got closer to what they're really, really good at. And that'll be the battle of this series, right? Both teams have something they're really good at. You can expect a certain amount of forecheck and physicality from us. You will expect a certain amount of speed and skill from them for sure. And then one team will feed the other. The team that brings the least amount of food to the game wins.
Can you talk about Sergei Bobrovsky's performance tonight, Paul, and going to him after the great run by Alex Lyon and that decision and really not looking back for Sergei?
Well, the back half of that game, he was brilliant. And we required him to be. The change... So what's the story I haven't told about that one? Let me make sure I get my game number right. In Game 4, Alex had been so good for us, but we'd run hard, like a lot, and the emotional toll for a goalie, you're starting to watch for. So we get Sergei into that game late because for me at that point, the goalie won't decide whether you come back or not. But when we get into the decision of whether he plays the next night, the hot hand, who's proven, we're down 3-1, the pressure needs to come back to the leaders. Elimination games, Game 7s are about the players, not the coaches. And the pressure needs to be, and he is in his career proven to handle that pressure. But he also needs it. He needs to go into that net for our team, for our franchise, and be the deciding factor. And since that, he's been fantastic.
Paul, can you talk about just Brendan Montour's game? He broke through really this season. What's allowed him to do this after so many seasons in NHL and to keep playing at that level in the playoffs as well?
Right. I think there's two things, maybe three. So first thing, he's an incredibly fit man. He had a very hard training camp, and he got better through it. So you break a bunch of guys, usually the young guys, and they go play in the American League, and then your strong men get better, and he came out of the gate very strong. Then he gets on the top of our power play. So he runs the power play. First opportunity to get first unit minutes, which push numbers, starts putting up numbers. That in turn allows his 5-on-5 game to settle. He doesn't need to, he's always been trying to prove to get out of the 5-6 hole. And then the third piece would be his partner. Mark has been fantastic for him. Mark is so incredibly consistent and experienced and knows the game and talks the game. He's funny as hell. So those two guys just built a fantastic chemistry, and I think that Brandon's kind of benefited from that. He did the work to come to camp in great shape. He got the opportunity to be up top because he has some fantastic skills. It allowed his game to settle, and then he got the right partner.
Paul, I got to ask you about Matthew Tkachuk. 3 assists tonight, 9 hits. He was taking hits to make plays.
Floating.
What's that?
He was floating.
Yeah. What else can you say about him, and where is his game at in these playoffs in terms of it seems like he keeps finding new levels?
Yeah. So I think there's been a maturation in his game, and we would say we took a bunch of penalties tonight. We took a lot of penalties in the first half of the year, and then he disappeared from that. He had 2 games where we were 17 minutes, but that's what happened in the game. Things blew up. And then he had 2 games where I think he has 2 minors in there. But in the back half of our season, he stayed out of the penalty box and understood that he could drive play and drive physicality like Sam Bennett is almost a more physical player than Sam collides at a high rate of speed. Matthews physical because he's around the puck and he kind of bumps and hits and he's heavy, but I think he realized how important he was just on the ice for our team in play. So he stayed out of his reputation doesn't match his last January 1st on his last 40 games. His game's just been pure production and compete. It's pretty good.
Sorry, I was talking to Don Granado, and he said that he's strategically smart in how he kind of goes about the business. Is that a fair way of describing the way he kind of goes about it now?
He looks like a kid that grew up in the game. He's been seeing somebody do that for years.
Yeah, Paul, you mentioned the penalties. What's your approach when it comes to coaching discipline? How do you make sure your team doesn't get down a man too much?
So we'll talk about three of them. The first one, I don't think, is the hit that Bennett put is no different than the hit that Riley. I can't fix that. That's going to take time for the Florida Panthers to be not viewed as that team. For me, they're identical. If you watch the Boston series, there were 10 of those, 15 of those a night. Okay. Second one, the guy steps on our stick. Oh, well. Third one's a high stick, it's ours. The one that goes to the net, to the scrum, I just don't feel it's discipline. Sometimes the stick gets up with five guys. But we have just accepted the fact that we will be in the penalty box more than the opponent, only because it's been true the last 8 games. So we'll just tell Sergei to get lots of sleep. That is all year. Finish the question. Sorry.
I was going to say, is it something you try to bring up with the series supervisor?
No, it's something we talk about in the room. We've been doing it all year. We were a team. It was exactly like when I went into Winnipeg. It was a team that previously had barked a lot about everything. And we were that team last year. So we got to take it on the chin a little bit to earn the reputation that we're right men. We can accept that.
Paul, Matthew said this morning that he didn't mean it in a derogatory way, but he said the team is almost oblivious to what the situation is. Game 7, down 3 in the series. Tonight, obviously a tough ask coming in less than 48 hours later. What allows this group to just put blinders on and just push forward?
You know what? I don't know is the answer, the truth. Really focused group. I think it's training that we kind of had to do that from January 1st on. We played a really poor game after the Christmas break in Carolina. And since that time, since the end of the first period of the Ranger game, I think it's January 2nd, we've been up against it and actually pretty good. Played pretty damn hard, pretty well. And so if we're a little fatigued because that series was heavy, it's kind of our normal day. When you look at our schedule, at the end of January, it was brutal. And that's when we started to play our best hockey. So being in the mud, as we would say, we're kind of used to it, I think.
How big was that win against Boston at home in the regular season?
Huge. Because I felt it was the first turning point where something good happened, right? You just keep telling them, stay in the fight, stay in the fight. When you look at that stretch, we go out on a 4-day trip that ends in Vegas, come home and play a game, go back out on the road for 3 and 4, so there's a back-to-back, and one of them was here, go home and play a game, fly back. So this is not a short trip from Florida to Toronto, right? We got to have the plane, go back up for 3 and 4, then play back-to-back, 2 days off, back-to-back, and that's Boston. And we're fried. And Barkey ties it, I think, with 4.7 less to go in that game, and Sam Reinhart, that for me was the turning point, where you just work your ass off, something good could happen. Because they were working their ass off, but nothing good was happening, right? So that was a huge game. So we got to enjoy the break differently than you're 9 points back, the world's coming to an end, you had 122, what's wrong, right? They dealt with that. We dealt well with it for 3 or 4 months.
Well,
I know Sasha was coming off that illness to start the series, but it seems like really since the middle of last round, he's been his usual self.
Yeah.
Just as he's grown, kind of as this has gone on,
Right.
Barkov, coming off the illness, seems like he's like right back to being himself.
I think he's been much better. No,
And just how much has that
than he's
changed
played
things for you
before. I
guys?
think in the last 2 months, his game has gone to another level. You won't see it necessarily production, but that production's starting to creep. The 2-day block off that we had in that Boston series probably saved him, right? He got some sleep, the fluids. Like, he was banged up going into that first game. And he's been really strong there. So those two wingers are unusual players to play with, incredible speed, as you saw in the goal. But they also need some covering, right? They need some weight to the line, and he's provided that. Yeah, he's been really good. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. On the watch check, I'm with you.
Text message.
No, yes, laddie, drop the hammer, hon. I'm ready.
Well, I mean, you already talked about Matthew Tkachuk, but I mean, in this game, he opens it by walking a Selke Trophy finalist. On the fourth goal, he's hugely pivotal. It didn't seem like they had an answer for him in this game, and when a guy like that is playing that way, huge personality. Huge on ice contribution. How do you handle that? Do you just let him roll with it?
So there'll be 3 levels to this answer, but I was very surprised at his hands. Clearly, that he's got good hands, but his hands are off the charts. I don't know if you saw that roll he did with his stick at the end that almost went in. Nobody does that. His production's been awesome, and I'm not shining you here. It's his personality that shocked the hell out of me. Because this is Winnipeg, Calgary, right? I didn't say very many nice things about this young man, or to him. I don't talk to players on the bench, but if he could hear what I was thinking, it wasn't very kind. And then, the first week he gets down there, he takes all the trainers out, and it's real. The way he treats the bus driver, flight attendants. He is the exact opposite of what you see on the ice, and caring about his teammates. So coaches will do this. They'll come out here and they'll say this stuff because it's the right thing to say. It's nice marketing. Everybody's happy. This guy shocked me with that. His personality. So I would say, and it's not my story to tell, but there are a number of stories in Winnipeg about his father taking care of people that needed help. And you didn't hear about it for years. And I hear about it, you come back in 10, 15 years later, and it's, like people that I know that needed help, and they took care of him. He's the exact guy. Now, I think his mom probably has more to do with it than the dad, because that's the way it works in hockey. But he's a special young man. And Sam Bennett's a hell of a player. I'm out.